Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this very interesting report of the United Nations Analytical and Monitoring Team, that is the 27th report, in which very categorically they have mentioned the kind of issues and problems Pakistan are going through since becoming the ally on war on terror. And as we have presented so many dossiers in which we have very categorically mentioned with proofs that India's involvement is there, and when we say that they're using the Afghan soil to destabilize Pakistan, that is very much on. Whether you talk about problems in Karachi, in KP, or you talk about Balochistan for that matter, attacks on our military points as well as attacks on the civilian soft targets, India is behind that. Now they are also sort of gathering these couple of splinter groups from Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan as well as Saifullah group, or for that matter you talk about Shahryar Masood group, or there were so many others, Hizbul Ehrar, Hizbul Tahrir, so and so forth. These are the groups which have been financed, supported, equipped, and they are given certain tasks by the Indian spy agency RAW to make sure that they should create havoc in Pakistan. Though our valiant and brilliant brave soldiers, they have done a tremendous job. Whether you talk about the intelligence-based combing operations or otherwise, they have made sure that there should be proper reduction in these terror attacks, and I think they've been able to do a great job. Well, talking about the issue which we'll be talking about in our today's program, let me read this out for you. The 27th report of the UN Analytical and Monitoring Team has acknowledged the ongoing efforts of the Pakistan government against elements involved in terrorist activities. It further states that the report on the UN says that Pakistan's long-standing position on threats posed by India to Pakistan and also to the region by groups like the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, JUA, HUA and their affiliates based in Afghanistan, stated by the Foreign Office. Further says that Pakistan in the past has drawn attention of the international community to the support provided to TTP and its affiliates by the hostile intelligence agencies. One of the results of that support was the merger of JUA, HUA and other splinter groups of Lashkar-e-Jhangvi with TTP in Afghanistan last year. It further says that it is a good thing that there is massive acknowledgement of what we have been saying, and hopefully the world is going to take notice of this, stated by the DGISPR Major General Babar Iftikhar. In 2020, Pakistan handed over a dossier to United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on the Indian sponsorship of TTP and JUA. Both terrorist groups have been designated by the 1267 Sanctions Committee of the Security Council. And lastly, in December 2020, the EU Disinfolab in its report, Indian Chronicles, a deep dive into a 15-year operation targeting Pakistan, EU and United Nations to serve Indian interests, termed this as the largest network of disinformation they have exposed. Now, this was going on for the last almost 15 years or so, and they were just there to malign Pakistan. And interestingly, they had their presence in almost all the major countries. Just look at the magnitude of the propaganda machine. But this is the way it is. So today, we have with us in our studio to talk about this, on my right is Air Vice Marshal retired Ikramullah Bhatti Saab, who is a senior analyst. Thank you so much, Bhatti Saab, for your time, sir. And we also have with us Waqas Naseem Saab, who is a leader of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and is an analyst also. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. And we'll be talking to Dr. Zulfiqar Kazmi, an expert on foreign affairs. And Kazmi Saab is joining us from United States of America. Kazmi Saab, it's a pleasure to have you, sir, in the show as well. But let me start off from you. Bhatti Saab, now I'm sure this is not something new for us. Perhaps it's new for the rest of the world. This is what we have been saying, and we've been claiming that the Indian hostility is not only limited to the LOC or the working boundary or perhaps on the regular border, but primarily the Afghan soil has been used against Pakistan, not for the first time. It's been used for quite some time now. And whatever has happened in Pakistan, whether we talk about the loss of $126 billion, sir, in terms of finance, or we talk about the loss of 83,000, sir, 83,000. I'm not sure what is the exact number of those who got injured in that, but 83,000 precious lives were lost, sir. Your take, sir, after the report.
Well, you see, when we look back in the recent past, we would recall the statement by the Indian Prime Minister on their Republic Day about undertaking activities in Balochistan. We have the episode of Kulbhushan Yadav. We have the statements of Asamullah Ahsan. And then, of course, our efforts in this direction in order to change or nullify the Indian narrative which they had built against Pakistan, that Pakistan is a country that is exporting terrorism, whereas we had been saying that Pakistan is in fact a very big victim of terrorism in this region. After Afghanistan, the next biggest hit that was taken by any other country was Pakistan. And as you just mentioned, we of course sent that dossier, and this momentum in fact was picked up in UNGA when the Prime Minister made that historic speech. And I think now the efforts of Pakistan have started to bear fruit, and we see these reports coming out in quick succession. We have a report that was presented in the US. We have a report given out by the United Nations, and as rightly pointed out in the media, that it has vindicated Pakistan's viewpoint that it is a victim of this terrorism which is emanating out of Afghanistan, and it is not indigenous in Afghanistan. I mean, there are foreign operators or operatives or actors who are actually sponsoring this in terms of planning, in terms of financing, in terms of equipping, and in terms of directing these operations from Afghanistan, and Afghan soil is being used, and Pakistan has been pointing this out to Afghan government, to the US, that so many operations are being coordinated, being launched, or being controlled from Afghanistan. And I think if we go back further into the recent history, we find that Mullah Fazlullah, who was the mastermind behind the that heinous act of killing so many children in the APS, was reported by Pakistan of having been in Afghanistan, where it took the Americans almost 4 years to locate and eventually eliminate him. But the fact is that the Americans have all the resources in the world that anybody could have, and they could gather intelligence, locate all the targets, and engage them with impunity. But unfortunately, it took them a lot of time. But the fact is that now that UN has acknowledged the presence of all these actors in Afghanistan, in the eastern part of Afghanistan, and they have also said that these are the entities or outfits which are undertaking operations in Pakistan. So I think now with this acknowledgement, with this vindication, I think the ball squarely lies not just in the Afghan government's court, but also with the US, because now that we find that the new administration has taken control in the US, and they are deliberating whether or not to adhere to this pull-out date of May this year. And there is every likelihood that they may want to continue to stay there, primarily from the point of view of controlling a terror activity over there, and engaging or eliminating those. And whatever the decision takes place, of course, the Taliban would have to be on board on this. And but the fact is that the US will have to hold that responsibility of engaging these outfits and removing them or eliminating them, so that this threat emanating out of Afghanistan, maybe at the behest of some other spoilers in the region, has to be tackled by the US, because they are the ones which have the capacity, which have the capability, and hence the responsibility to tackle and eliminate this threat, which is not just to Pakistan or to Afghanistan, but eventually to the region.
I think that's a very important point. But sir, when you look at the reality that there is a lot of presence of Daesh there, you talk about Hizbul Tahrir, Hizbul Ahrar, you talk about a couple of splinter groups of TTP. And I still remember when you talk about Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Maulvi Naik Muhammad, he just had this agenda that he wanted to impose Shariat in Malakand area, in particular in Sawat. But this man, who was the son-in-law of Maulvi Nik Mohammed, hijacked his campaign and in fact turned it into a massive, kind of aggression, which had such aggression. And I would say even this man is full of venom, because person who is taking that kind of money from the Indians and then, sponsoring terrorism, and then on top, trying to sort of, engage all these splinter groups and come up with a very strong force. A lot of people believe that it could be around 10,000 people with him. And obviously, when you're talking about 10,000 armed people, that's not a joke, sir. So, when Ayub Saab says that, the Americans would eliminate them, there are certain groups which are supported by the Americans, because obviously they have their own interest. Do you think the overall equation inside Afghanistan is now getting really confused?
It is a very pertinent question. How did we arrive at this situation? You would have to revisit history and you will see that 9/11 was the root cause of what happened in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, Middle East and the larger world. The war against terror, the clash of civilizations. This was the benchmark of American administrations, consecutive administrations, which you used to say. And there was a very nice movie, I would recommend you to watch that, Fahrenheit 9/11, and that was how they created a hysteria that before the dust from World Trade Towers, and which was an intolerable cruelty. Those 4,000 people, I feel their pain of loss of life, just like I feel the pain of the loss of life of my children in APS Peshawar. So we value human life. Now what has happened is that there's a common saying in the world that the creation of America is a conspiracy to keep everyone happy. How did these Taliban end up over there? Who was Osama bin Laden? He was the facilitator of American agents to move into Afghanistan through Pakistan. He was brought to Pakistan by CIA. There was nobody else who brought them here. That was in return for the reverse Vietnam, which America wanted to play with Russia and Afghanistan. The great game that has been going on in this region for the past 4,000 years. America got a bloody nose in Vietnam. They got a resounding defeat by the Vietcong, the North Vietnamese, who were supported by the Russians, the Soviets at that time, and America wanted to get even with that. So what happened is that they brought arms, ammunition, and plus drugs to our region, and militarization of our tribal areas happened. Radical Islam was brought to them, and this was inculcated to them by the Americans, financed, sponsored, and trained by American recruiters. What happened is, sir, that when we were told in 2001 that 3,000 people have died miraculously before the dust settled, it was deemed that Osama bin Laden, OBL, was responsible for that.
And honestly speaking, nobody had heard about him.
Nobody
prior
knew
to that.
Sir, that is not the thing. We all live in the 21st century. He was in Sudan.
Stray kid.
Sir, he was in Sudan, and the Sudanese government wanted to hand him over to the Americans, and they refused to take his custody. And then he was allowed free passage all across 3,000 kilometers all the way to Afghanistan. We are living in the 21st century. We understand what are the dynamics of international espionage. So what is happening, sir, that according to this 27th report of the Analytical and Monitoring Team of United Nations, we stand vindicated, our narrative, our locus standi, our point of view stands re-established by international committees and international observers who say that we are the biggest victim of international terrorism.
Correct.
We are victims of international terrorism by Hard, by Mossad, by RAW and extra-regional intelligence agencies who are working in Afghanistan and playing that 4,000-year-old great game. What happened? How can we show them the smoking gun? We didn't require this 27th report from the monitoring or analytical. We had Kulbhushan Yadav as AVM.
But this definitely adds value to our stars.
That does. But sir, we have a serving army officer, naval officer of India who was carrying the name or dummy name, a pseudo name, was running a gold business in Char Bahar, and he was orchestrating all sorts of nuisance inside of Balochistan. A serving officer. This is the smoking gun. You don't need any more. There's no dossiers. There's nothing else. We have that person. A lie detector test, polygraphic test can be taken that if he's under duress or there's a fact to that. So let me tell you, Ajit Dogal is the mastermind of doing this, the National Security Advisor. Amit Shah This BJP RSS-led mentality is going to plunge the region into a chaos. This is a recipe for disaster, and the international echelons of power, the world power centers need to understand, Faisal Bhai, that we are on the precipice. We are on the brink of the abyss. There are two nuclear-armed neighbors, eyeball to eyeball, like Soviet Union and America. There used to be 10,000 kilometers of distance between the two. We are just a stone throw away. And we are emotional nations, we are young nations, we don't have 400 or 500 years of history, we just came 73 years ago into existence. We need to understand one point very, very, very clearly, that we will safeguard the frontiers of Pakistan. Every worthless grain of sand will be defended. Now, what have we done which can be genuinely put on ground and we can defend that? They say there was cross-border terrorism inside Afghanistan from Pakistan. Pakistan Army, Pakistan intelligence, Pakistan civil society, Pakistani politicians became one and said, okay, let's fence the border. Let's put in joint patrols. Let's have motion sensors. Let's have landmines. Let's just demarcate everything. And they were the ones who said no. We said, let's have biometric verification at the border crossing points. Let's verify who's coming in and going out. But because they wanted to make a scapegoat out of us. This is planned. You have to understand the GLOC, G-L-O-C, ground lines of communication which we provided to the coalition forces inside Afghanistan. Faisal Bhai, if we were not instrumental in supporting them, America would not have been able to sustain itself even for a month inside Afghanistan. You have to understand, it's a very difficult thing to fight a battle, and that also 10,000 miles away. It is very difficult to have 10 people inside your home to manage them. So coming all the way from Washington DC or Tampa, Florida, and running a war in backyard Kabul is a very difficult thing. Sir, Ajit Dogal and the RSS-led government by Narendra Modi, who has now become a yogi and is growing hairs, and I don't know what is next for him. He is going to
growing beard, growing hairs,
and
some pundits must have told him that, right?
Sir, what is he saying? Maybe the force be with you. Now he's reciting Star Wars, for God's sake. What is next for him? So this is the point which we need to hammer across the world. Samjhota Express was bombed by a serving colonel of Indian Army. We have got Kulbhushan Yadav, who is a serving commander of the Indian Navy. We have got Ajit Dogal, who has always said, let's not fight with Pakistan. Let Pakistan
you talk about Pathankot incident. You talk about Pulwama incident. You talk about 26/11. You talk about the attack in 2001 on the parliament. These were all planned in India, and they were executed by their own people. Just to malign Pakistan, blame Pakistan, and sort of put Pakistan under pressure. But sir, I'll just get back to you. Let me also involve our friend from USA, Dr. Zulfiqar Kazmi sahab. So first point which I want you to throw light on is about the overall perception that has been created after the release of this report, and in particular tell us how media is looking at it. So the US media, obviously they are the narrative makers, they are the people who actually create a story, and one can capitalize on that. So your take.
Thank you so much, Faisal Sahab. It's $1 million question. But before that, I would like to say that war and terror history is very complex history. It has very deep-rooted, matters. If we see that how Pakistan was compelled to involve in that war and terror, it's a long story. And my other colleagues have mentioned about that one. But what you are talking about this report is very important. And this time is very important, because when we see that India is facing too many problems and internal problems, and these problems have been created by their own, and how Modi government wants to handle India and how they want to tackle Kashmir issue, all these are fake ways, and people are not accepting it within India and outside India. And so this report, I think that I would like to appreciate Imran Khan government, because they have worked very hard in 2020 to gather all those information that was going against India, and they sponsored terrorism. So it's very important that how media will be looking, because it's a fresh report, and 27th report is not an ordinary report actually, because the group who has compiled the report is a very, very well-informed group, and they know that what is going on in India, in Pakistan, and Afghanistan. But I think that now Afghanistan take a benefit. What benefit they can take? That with the collaboration of the international security forces and with the help of Pakistan. But situation is in Afghanistan, and as we know that in previous 3 months, 100 attacks in Pakistan, cross-border attacks. So it's very, very important that we should look into the report and how we could, bring all those communities together. I mean, Afghanistan, and even, I would say Iran even, and I would say that China even, that we have to inform them that what is the report and how India can be, I will not say punish or something because it's not our job, but definitely they should raise their voice. So it's very important that media should focus just on, because media has a very important role. It's a very, very important role, a very critical role to talk about Kashmir issue. And within India, there's a farmers movement. Actually, what was happening? Modi wanted to take a benefit, because of Kashmir issue, that Kashmir is, they think that it's silent. No, it's not silent. Kashmir is, is very much visible in the eyes of the people, and the people are looking towards Kashmir, and they were thinking that farmer movement had been handled, but no, this movement has gone beyond, and now people are thinking that these kind of movement, like the freedom movement in Kashmir and farmer movement for their rights and for the democracy, that movement has, given a right perspective about India, that what is India, how they are, handling the people, how they talk about the democracy, but there is no democracy over there. So these are the things. This report, I think, that it's I will say that it's very timely report, because these two issues, but it's a farmer movement in India and Kashmir issue, as we had just celebrated, Solidarity Day with Kashmiri people. So I think that world attention will be drawn towards this report, and media has focuses very seriously. But I think that's a major role which has played, and it needs to be played by America, because the United Nations, when they think that Pakistan's claim, and Pakistan was blamed wrongly in previous, many, many years, and during the war on terror, and after all those phases, Pakistan has suffered a lot. And as my other colleagues have said, that it's very important that we should tell to the people that what was the loss of Pakistan. Pakistan was destabilized, and thanks to Pakistan forces, they are taking care of that one. But they had given a big threat to the democracy in Pakistan even, because of all these things. And then Pakistan suffered a lot, $126 billion, loss. And meanwhile, the development was stopped. And meanwhile, it's not a small loss. That's 83,000 civilian and military people, gave their lives just for the war on terror, because they rejected the terror. So it's very important.
Kazmi Sahab, I'll get back to you on that, but let me put this question to AVM Sahab here. AVM Sahab, a couple of points. Now, when we talk about the Biden regime, there seem to be people, primarily they talk about human rights. They have mentioned in their statements regarding Kashmir issue. Obviously, they're very keen to bring a proper, logical conclusion as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Now, sir, when we talk about this kind of regime, do you think this is going to give Pakistan a lot of strength when it comes to decision making? Because at the end of the day, whether they like it or they don't like it, Pakistan holds the key, sir, for peace in Afghanistan. And the kind of dirty role the Indians are playing to malign Pakistan otherwise, that dirty role is going to get marginalized to a certain level, sir. What do you say?
Well, I think there are a couple of determinants of the policy that the new US administration would adopt or is likely to adopt. Firstly, of course, how they tackle China, because Donald Trump had taken China as an enemy, and his policy was rather hostile. Now, Biden is a very seasoned diplomat, and he is a very seasoned politician. I mean, he is known to be the youngest senator and the oldest president.
Yeah.
And
he's been there in the business since 1972-73.
So I think he's going to take China not as an enemy but as a competitor. So his policies are not going to be overly, acrimonious, or he'll be playing on a different field. So I think that is going to determine the relationship of America with India, as to how they want to match up with China, and would they like to use India to contain China or to arrest China's growth, or they would like to compete openly, which Biden is expected to because of his profile. Secondly, we look at it as to why the US eventually decided to leave Afghanistan. Because when we look at the beginning, as covered by my colleague, they came in to punish Al-Qaeda because they blamed Al-Qaeda for 9/11. So and they said that Osama bin Laden orchestrated all this activity, and with his killing, as they claim, I think their mission was accomplished. They should have left at that time.
It's been 10 years, 2011 May.
They should have left by now.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So there are
some other sort.
There are several other connotations which you can add to it, that there are 3 trillion worth of minerals in Afghanistan. Then they like to sit there and control the region, keep an eye on China, Pakistan, India, Russia, Iran, the Middle East. It's a very lucrative and a commanding position sitting there. But we also see that there is a price to it if they want to stay there. They've spent over $2 trillion. They've lost around 2,500 American lives. And it was becoming untenable both financially and in terms of human cost for the American regime, because they have not been able to achieve their objective of turning Afghanistan into a very peaceful, democratic country who's living or being governed by the values of the systems which the Americans like, but that has not happened. So in fact, after 2011 and until today, they have not been able to achieve these objectives. And eventually, because of the high costs in terms of finances and human life, they decided to call it quits. And of course, they ended up having an agreement with the Taliban that they would leave by May this year, and the Taliban also gave them certain assurances. Now we have a situation where the new American regime is rethinking this, and we hear that they want to delay their departure beyond May, and of course it will have to be negotiated with the Taliban. The Taliban so far have kept their promise. They have not attacked the American or the NATO forces anymore, and they've limited their violence or military activity against the local.
It's not an absolute ceasefire, but it's been limited.
It's been limited. So the only development that has taken place as a result of that agreement was that there has been exchange of prisoners between Taliban and the Kabul regime.
And they've arrested them again.
Yes.
Quite a lot of them.
So I think now the Americans will have to, of course, get the Taliban on board, because they cannot unilaterally decide to delay their departure. And the Taliban will have to agree to it if they want to go beyond that. Because if the Taliban do not agree, then we are going to see a surge in violence once again. And violence is something which the Taliban are used to for the last over 2 decades.
They are at peace when they are at war.
So whereas it is going to increase the cost. It's going to both finance as well as human lives, and it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for the new American administration to justify to the American public any more extended stay, any more additional cost. So I think whatever agreement that takes place now between the two sides, that is the America and the US and the Taliban will have to be on board. Without that, I think the Americans are going to be...
This process can't just go on. That's correct. Now another point, sir, when we talk about... I'll just read out a couple of points. They were also discussed by Munir Akram Saab in the United States of America. But prior to that, sir, when you look at United States of America, though, look at their firepower, the kind of economy they have, $21 trillion worth of economy, but yet, having said that, $27 trillion of debt. Now, a country which is in that kind of a situation, look at the outcome of the recent elections. Look at the chaos. I mean, I would say this was one of the closest elections ever fought.
True.
And they won eventually, but still a lot of people in the United States of America who are Trump supporters believe that this was an election which was hijacked by the certain elements, obviously, which are almost in every country. So that would definitely put Biden under a lot of pressure. I'm sure that is going to create problems. But having said that, when you say that this regime has decided to leave, but it seems now that Biden is not going to leave, they will definitely keep a certain number. When we talk about containing China, why should they leave, sir? They are already there. When we talk about keeping a check on the Russians, because this was stated by their Secretary of State lately, and even General Lloyd, the Defense Secretary, that two of our major adversaries were and will remain. One is Russia, one is China. So why to leave? That doesn't make sense at all then. And Iran on one side and Pakistan down there in the south.
Faisal Bhai, you have to understand, comprehend and realize that what is the locus standi of the Americans in this conflict? They wanted to kill a 72-year-old man living with 5 wives somewhere, hiding in some cave. No, that was not true. America does not stoop so below. If they wanted to kill somebody, that was very easy. That could have been done long before.
If they want to kill someone, they can use a ripper. Look what they did to General Soleimani.
Let me just tell what the American soldiers used to say, and we used to laugh about it. That sitting in our bases in Germany, we could hear the Red Army, a soldier of Red Army's teeth chuckling in Ukraine. They have got such sensors and they have got such technology that they can monitor. They have got those echelons and NSAs and God knows what all they have. Now, 100+ attacks have been carried out according to United Nations inside Pakistan, and America somehow does not know what is going on. America is sitting at its hand and it says that it is clueless what is happening. American satellites are showing that the largest poppy fields in the world are in Afghanistan, and America can see them in broad daylight. They are not camouflaged, and America is not doing anything about them. Now this nexus...
That's where the money is.
That's where the money is. That is exactly what is happening, that this is being orchestrated. This is an international agenda, fourth generation warfare, trying to implode Pakistan. Now let me tell you, Taliban were fighting for Islamic regime. Let's take it on that. Let's say that on the face value that is true. Tell me, why would they kidnap Chinese engineers working on CPAC project or in Gwadar? What did Taliban had to do with Chinese engineers? This was something which was planned, which was coordinated, this was supplied, this was executed. Hallmarks of Indian intelligence. Let me further tell you, America is in Afghanistan. During the earthquake, I belong to Kashmir, so Faisal Bhai, American choppers came in and their servicemen came in and they helped us with relief goods. So we were sitting down with them where the planes were going to, the goods were being offloaded, and we were sitting down and they said that we are the most fearsome army that has ever roamed earth. In the history of mankind, we are the most fearsome army, and I laughed. I said, I don't know about much of a fearsome army, but how much are you spending per week inside Afghanistan? They said $4 billion a week for 10,000 people. And we laughed that we have 1 million troops. 1 million troops with nuclear program, chemical program, biological program, Navy, missile program, Air Force, and we spend $3 billion or $4 billion for them, and you're spending
Total budget was around $8 to $9 billion
that's it.
annually, yeah?
So we asked him, I asked a very pertinent question to that officer, I forget his name. I asked him that you have fighting Taliban for the past, say, 6-7 years. You have to tell me how many infantry divisions do the Taliban have? They said no. And they must have a hell of artillery divisions. They must be, the most sophisticated houses they must have. They said, no, they don't even have something beyond 7.62. I said, they must have some armor, must pack a punch, and that would be over the roof. And they said, no, they don't have a single tank. Then I said, their ground defenses, their SAMs, EKIC, which we call, they would be outstanding. They said, no, they don't have anything beyond some Stingers which we gave to them in 1980s. I said, okay, so their infantry, their armor, their artillery is not there, so they must have a hell of an air force.
Foot soldiers.
They must have something beyond F-22 Raptors and the Apaches you have. They said they don't even have a jet trainer. They don't have an airport. What to talk of an air force? I said, okay, they don't have an army, they don't have an air force, they must have a heck of a navy, aircraft carrier, and nuclear submarines that you're fighting. You're spending $4 billion per week on 10,000 soldiers, and that comes to $2 trillion. That is $2,000 billion you've spent fighting a phantom enemy. They said, no, they don't even have a sea, what to call of a navy. So this is just a hoax which is being perpetrated. They are fighting nobody. There is a phantom enemy. There is a ghost army. There is nothing going on in Afghanistan. What is happening is a great game is being played. America is there to keep a check on Iran. Their predator, those, what was that, the UAVs which was captured by the Iranians. And that is over there.
As well, yeah?
Yep, that is with the Iranians right now. They are keeping a check on China. They want to have a foothold in Central Asia. They are keeping a check on Pakistan. And this great game is plunging the region in a catastrophe. This is a recipe for disaster. Understand, sir, CPAC is something on which America and India have this similar words being used in the media. This needs to be checked and this needs to be arrested. We need to tell that CPAC is not a military project. It is for the development of China and Pakistan and to integrate the local economies of the two countries. That has no extra regional thing. Secondly, sir, what Disinfo Lab has said, and you had said very rightly in the intro, that for 15 to 20 years with a sanctioned budget, not even against Pakistan, against United States of America and European Union, India has had a concentrated force deployed which is trying to spread disinformation. Let me give you an example, Faisal Bhai. I was in my metric class and I went to Holiday Inn Hotel in Islamabad back in 1994-95, and there were a lot of people gathered over there, and I said, what happened? They said, the Mujahideen are here to give a press conference, give evidence that India was looting, plundering, raping women and children in occupied Kashmir. They have got the smoking gun over there. They gave that, and next day I saw ZTV used to come, and they said Pakistan caught red-handed. And we said, what happened? They said an ISI brigadier, there was a bald fellow wearing a coat and he was serving people over there. This is the ISI brigadier who has coordinated this press conference, and there was an ISI major who paid all the bills. Next day, Holiday Inn, when I went in, that person was serving there from Rawalakot, Azad Kashmir. He was the head waiter for 18 years, that brigadier. And that major was your colleague from Associated Press of America. He was over there, and they had to give
you talk about propaganda. This is what propaganda is.
I can give you what I saw, and this is, you have the video clips for that. They have been orchestrating, venoming out this propaganda for the past 30 years, that Muslim extremism, Muslim fascism, cross-border terrorism, whereas the only thing that is happening is that indigenous people want a ballot paper printed in Kashmir which says, A, you want to join Pakistan, B, you want to join India, bearing the United Nations emblem. That is it. This only needs to be done, and this is the root cause. So long as India realizes that this has to be done, unfortunately, why aren't they doing this? Because they know the answer before being framed, the question before the populace. They know what the people will decide. They know that
that's why they're changing the demographics. That's exactly what they're up to.
They are now giving 3.3 million. They themselves, their minister has said that we have given 33,84,000 domiciles have been given in the past 1 year. Now they are trying to turn a majority into a minority. They are changing the demographics of the area. Now this is going to have a result, and just because they feel that on the line
if you're talking about holding a plebiscite at some stage, maybe after 10 years or so, things would be totally changed.
Because the majority will be a minority. Now, sir, with these 100+ attacks, let's dissect this 27th report of the analytical and monitoring team of United Nations. They need to include what incidents have happened with the United Nations vehicles. They went to Neelam about a month ago to Kashmir in broad daylight, sir, in broad daylight. And Unimog group is deployed in India also. They informed their movement to the Indian side.
And you can look at the size of the jeep, look at these stickers based on.
And they started firing on them.
Yes.
Because they were collecting evidence that they were shooting at civilians over there. During prayer times, deliberate pointed attacks were being carried out by uniformed Indian soldiers against women and children.
Look at what is happening on the LOC throughout. I mean, these poor people who are living there. I mean, that is so touching. I mean, sir, can you imagine? Forget about the humans. They are targeting their animals also. I mean, that is primarily their livelihood.
Faisal bhai, I don't want to play like a bleeding heart over here. We are soldiers. We are proud people. We can take a beating in the field. There's nothing unique about that. We are Muslim soldiers and we know how to stand our ground in the field. But what happens is there was a decorum which existed, because this profession of arms is a very noble profession. Okay, we do it for our country and they do it for their country. We respect each other in that. But what is happening is we used to kill. We never tortured our enemy. Now they shoot somebody in their leg or in the hip, and they continue shouting and bleeding till they bleed to death, and they don't let them die, or they don't let medics come and pick them up, so that the entire population is terrorized.
Aggression is to that level that, people who were fired upon and they were using these pellet guns on the faces. Just imagine. Look at the number of, oh my God. And those people, who went to the hospitals, to get some sort of treatment, they were picked up from the hospitals and they were dragged and they were sent in the jail.
Faisal bhai, just one point. What is happening by these TTP? Listen, understand the nature of this demon is that they cannot unite. To bring these demons, this Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, this ISL, Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, bringing these people together needs a level of sophistication which is beyond Afghan army's capability. So this is being managed, this is being orchestrated, this is being funded, this is being planned by nothing else but India inside Afghanistan.
When you talk about the dirty role of India, that is there and will remain there till we do something. Now coming to you, Kazmi Saab, I was going through this very interesting document, and that is about, what Munir Akram Saab said. And in fact, there are 8 points, and he talked about the sponsorship of listed terrorist organizations, TTP and Jamaat al-Ahrar, and so on and so forth. And he also talked about support to the Baloch insurgents by the Indians, that you should attack the CPEC. Primarily, the major focus of the enemy is on CPEC. Then they talked about merging these TTP splinter groups and making them one single unit, providing weapons, ammunition and IEDs to these people and these groups. And then raising a special force of 700 people to sabotage CPEC. And, they were given training and they were properly, equipped, and then they were assigned these tasks. And then tasking terrorists with conducting targeted killings of important Pakistani personalities, whether you talk about the politicians or you talk about senior